Fishback, who is one of our fantastic Code Louisville students turned mentors. And Sonny is going to give us an introduction to Svelte.js. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over. Thanks so much for being here with us tonight, Sonny.
No problem. Thank you for the intro. Can everyone hear me? Good. Sweet. Yeah, so I'm a Code U alum and part-time mentor. And for the past 2 years, I've been using Svelte. The first time I heard about it, Hope, yeah, go ahead. Maybe that was a mistake. Post your question in the chat if you have one, and I will look at the chat. This is going to be very fast-paced, so I probably won't be able to get to everyone raise their hand. So just put in the chat. Yeah, like I was saying, I've been using Svelte for 2 years, and I loved it since I started learning it. So that's what we're going to talk about, Svelte. So what is Svelte? Svelte is a UI framework. So it's a tool to allow you to use, you can use to build user interfaces, reactive user interfaces, and it separates itself from the other more popular frameworks like React, Angular, Vue.js, in a lot of different ways. The biggest difference and decision the Svelte team made when creating this project was they created a compiler to compile your Svelte code into vanilla.js. So that allows them to do a bunch of cool stuff that we're going to cover and make their framework very lightweight. So that's what Svelte means. It's Swedish and it means attractively thin, graceful, and stylish here. I posted a link in the chat of component party and the Svelte docs. Svelte allows you to write very concise, simple code compared to the other frameworks. So really quick before we get started, component party.dev allows you to compare different frameworks and the features of them. And just want to show you really quick. We can click on View, Svelte, and compare these. And just looking at Svelte, it looks very simple. You have your name here. That's some state, which is set to John, and then you just render it out here. It looks like regular HTML almost, except these dollar symbols. And you don't require a API to even interact with your state here. So if you look at React, you see you got to import use state. In Vue, you got to import ref, which are these abstractions that you have to use to mutate state. So without further ado, let's get into Svelte. For those who are not familiar with reactive frameworks, reactive frameworks pretty much are built to solve a lot of the common problems that you experience when building user interfaces. For example, you want to track users' state or the state of your application. You want to have some data, and anytime that data changes, you want your application to react to it. You want to be able to reuse components. I don't know how many people here are front-end devs and haven't used a reactive framework before, but you probably ran into a situation where you want a global header or footer in your project, and you have to copy that HTML and JavaScript and CSS code over each page by page, and there's not a lot of reusability. So that's what reactive UI frameworks solve. They solve those problems and more. So when I say compilers, Svelte has a compiler. Pretty much you can think of it as a smart JavaScript translator. So you write your code in .svelte files, and the compiler then translates that code into lightweight vanilla JS. And this makes the projects you built with Svelte much faster and performant. The reason why is when you have a framework like React or Vue.js or Angular, you have your code, your business logic that you write, and those are lines of codes, folders of code, and it's a lot of bytes, right? And you also, or it's a lot of, maybe bytes isn't the best word, it's a lot of characters, right? Code is just characters, and it takes up space. With React, Angular, Vue.js, you actually have to ship the entire React code base, the entire Vue.js code base with your code, so that at runtime, React or Angular are able to interpret your code. So you have to ship their entire project with your project. So I haven't fact checked this, but I fact checked it in the past. Usually when you start like a create React app, or a normal small like starter app for React, you're around 30, 40 kilobytes, where a Svelte project is around 3 kilobytes. And as your application grows, when you work at a project, when you have a bunch of different features, a bunch of different pages, this becomes even more significant. So Svelte has better performance and a smoother user experience, because on mobile devices, which is very important, and devices that have slower internet speeds, there's less data to transfer on initial page load. So that's pretty much a overview of some of the things that separate Svelte. But as we dive into the documentation, we are going to be taking a break every once in a while to kind of highlight the differences and things I find really cool about Svelte. Like I said, this is going to be very fast paced, and I'm going to skip over a lot. This is for intro, people that this is their first intro to Svelte or don't have very much experience with Svelte. For those that do have experience with Svelte, you may not learn a lot unless you haven't been keeping up with Svelte 5, which has been released in the past few months. So either way, hope you enjoy. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and I will try my best to get to those when I can. So pretty much we're just going to walk through the documentation. One thing about Svelte and their ecosystem is it's built by devs for devs. It's really cool. So like the tutorial here, we're not going to go through this tutorial. I encourage everyone to do that. It allows you to go through basics, advanced concepts, and also like see the solve button here. You're able to test your solutions. It explains everything in great detail, and it's honestly the best documentation out of all of the UI frameworks that I have experience with, primarily Vue and React and a little bit of Angular. So let's get started. So we're gonna just go straight to the docs. We're not using Svelte Kit. We're using Svelte. I'm gonna skip over a bunch of stuff, but let's get started. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to do npx create, and this command, and I'm putting a P in front of it because I'm using PNPM. Everyone can use npm. I'm not going to be using npm. So we're going to say to do app, because we're going to be creating a to-do app. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to say we want the minimal project. Another thing that Svelte does that's really cool, they allow you to have a template for creating libraries. I'm not going to get deep into that, but that's really cool. We're going to use TypeScript. Now, don't get scared if you've never used TypeScript before. TypeScript is not a language. It is a tool built on top of JavaScript to allow you to have type-safe code. So pretty much what type-safe is, you know what types are, or you will be learning what types are soon. Types are the data types that you have, whether it be a string or a Boolean or an object or whatever type that you can build using those types. And it's type safe because TypeScript doesn't allow you to treat code that accepts a string as code that accepts a Boolean. It'll yell at you. So before you deploy your code, you can catch a lot of these common issues that you would run into with JavaScript. So if you don't have any experience with TypeScript, that's all right. I think you'll be able to keep up just fine. So we're going to add prettier. We're going to add ESLint. It's really cool. You can add VTest and Playwright and all these cool things here just with the click of a button. But we're not going to add those. We're keeping it simple. So you can use npm. I'm going to use PNPM. It's just a little bit quicker. Pretty much everything's the same in regards to what we're going to be doing today. So yeah, let's get started. So we're going to cd change directories into to-do app and PNPM install PNPMI. All right, so and then we're going to run the project. So let's see what we can do here. PNPM run outputs, or if you do npm run, like every command that I'm doing with PNPM, you can do with npm. So there's no difference. So dev here is what we're going to run. PnPm dev, and this is going to run our local Vite server. Vite is a dev tool, a build tool that is more popular as of late. You've probably ran into this if you used Vue recently or Svelte. It's pretty cool. So you see that it says Introduction to SvelteKit. That's because when you do the Svelte CLI and you create a project, it creates SvelteKit project. We're not going to talk much about SvelteKit. Just know that SvelteKit is going to handle the routing for us. So if for some reason we switch routes today from /about to /more about, then that's what SvelteKit will do for us. It does a lot of other cool stuff that we're not going to have time to get into today. So, all right, we're going into routes and we're going to go to this page.svelte. This means it's a page. So I'm going to close this toolbar so we don't get confused. And then let's go back to the docs here. So where are we going to start? I don't think that there's any explanation of this here, but I think maybe Svelte files tells us that we can, there it is. Yeah, so here it is. Yeah, so Svelte files allow us, TypeScript. Svelte allows us to, and we're going to delete this and pretend we didn't see that. Svelte allows us to write our JavaScript and our markup and our style sheet all in the same file. So if you're coming from like a Vue.js background, this probably looks familiar to you. So yeah, let's go ahead and check out these notes that I left myself. And so the first thing you do is you write your Svelte code in .svelte file. So your Svelte code must have a .svelte file path extension. And since we're using CSS, we're going to specify that. I don't think we have to. I usually use CSS. That's why I always do that. But I mean, SAS. So I always do that, but probably don't have to. All right. So let's talk about template syntax. So we're going to create our first component and get some state on here. And the easiest thing comes to mind is a increment and decrement counter. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to specify count. And this is going to be state, and we're going to start our state off at 0. And then here, we'll just have an H2 here, and we'll say count and save this. And oops, I got to toggle autosave here. All right, so you see 0 here. And that's our state. Now, we want to increment this and decrement this. So let's put some buttons here. This one's going to be called increment. And let's put a button here and call this decrement. And then let's take a second to talk about what we've done so far. So first thing, can't skip over here, is how we declare state. So this state is a rune. And what runes are in Svelte, if you think of Svelte as a language, then runes are part of the syntax. Runes are, you don't have to import them, and they start with this dollar symbol here. And I'm not going to dive too deep into runes right now, but I will touch base on them, each rune that we introduce. This rune runes allow you to communicate with the Svelte compiler. So this is saying, hey, Svelte compiler, by the way, when you build my application, I want you to write the vanilla JS that you're converting my code into to be reactive. So anything that references this count or mutates this count, we need to react to it. And that's what these frameworks solve, like React, right? They named it React. to solve that problem, reacting to state changes, because it's a really hard problem to solve by yourself with vanilla JS. It's not fun. So, oops. If you're familiar with the React or Vue.js, this seems, I mean, yeah, Vue.js, this seems similar. How you pass in JavaScript expressions into your HTML is through these curly braces. What I'll say here is with JavaScript, I mean with JSX in Vue, when you write your code, it feels like you're writing JavaScript and you're cramming HTML into it. But with Svelte, it feels like you're just writing HTML and sprinkling in a little bit of JavaScript. So let's go ahead and add our first event listener here. And we're going to use curly braces because that's how we pass in JavaScript expressions. We could also put these functions in the script here. This is where you write your JavaScript and pass them in, but we're not going to get there yet. So we're going to do count ++, and then, all right, so that just works just like that. And now, what do I need to do here to decrement this? Does anyone know how I could decrement? So I would on-click, right? And then pass in another function. Sorry, I've got a new keyboard. And then we're going to count minus here. Oops, geez. Minus here. All right, so now we've implemented increment and decrement counter. So a few things I want to call out here before we move on. You pass in JavaScript expressions and curly braces. You use, to react to events, you use on click or on hover. And what else are we covering here? And then runes. We're going to get back to runes. All right. So go back to my notes. What's the second most important thing here? You got state here. Oh, yeah. So we covered that. All right. Next thing is templating. So let's go to the documentation and let's look. We're going to skip over all this rune stuff, and we're going to go to basic markup. So markup in Svelte can be thought of as HTML++, right? It's HTML on steroids. So lowercase tags like this are, I don't know if this is big enough. Let me make this big enough. Is that better? I think so. I'll minus one out. Hopefully that's good for everyone. Lowercase tags are your regular HTML tags, and uppercase tags like this widget, for example, or with dot notation indicates a component. You pass attributes to your components or to your HTML tags the same way as you do, same way you've learned, right? Like class, ID, whatever you're passing into a component, you just pass it in as an attribute. Attributes can also contain JavaScript expressions with the curly brace here. For example, so if I were implementing like a link and I was like, I want the user to go back to their previous page, I could do something like I could do script, do this, say A, then I could make this expression, and then in here, say slash, and then previous URL here, and then we'll copy this. And then we'll say www.ashley. And then we wouldn't want a backslash anymore. And then we got to say something here. So we got to say, go home, save that. And now So we're using SvelteKit, getting in the way. But yeah, so you could pass in JavaScript expressions into your attributes. This is cool. For example, let's say you wanted to make an API call every time a user clicks a button. You wouldn't want the user to be able to spam the button, right? And make a bunch of API calls. It would be expensive for your server. So you could say like, all right, while the last API call you made is loading, we're going to disable this button. And once it's loaded, we can enable the button. So let's go a little bit deeper into template syntax. We're going to get through most of these. Well, not most of these. We're not going to get through these last few here, but let's do if block. So if expression allows you to conditionally render out markup or components. So let's do that really quick. So we'll say pound symbol if, and then we want to do else in here, right? I'm going to do else. So we'll say if is under age, false. If is under age, you are under age. H2, you are kinda old. All right, so let's look at this. So underage is false. So you are kind of old shows underage is true. You are underage. And we're gonna go through the features, and then we're gonna actually do some real world stuff here. So we also have each here, each key. So this is also a block in Svelte that does some cool stuff. So let's do each, and then we're gonna say let list items. We want this to be 1, 2. Then we'll say each list items as list item. And then we'll say, we'll make this a list item. Then we'll list item here. And then we gotta make this, put this in a UL. All right, so save that. And then we can see that these are rendered out. So instead of having to rewrite a component over and over again, you could use this and dynamically render those components, render those lists out. And then key is key blocks allow you to destroy and recreate contents when the value of expression changes. This is important later when we talk about animations. This is if you change some data, you want to re-render this component completely, so that all of those things that happen when the component is first rendered on the page happen again. Usually that's what your animations are associated with. So usually that's what I'm using key for. It's the only thing I've used key for now that I think of it. So we'll show example of this once we once we get to animations. We got a lot to cover and not a lot of time. So now let's talk about await. So a lot of times, like I said, you might push a button and some asynchronous process happens, whether it's calling some third-party library that you installed as a dependency of your project, or you are making an API request over the network to another server, and you're waiting for that data to come back. So what await block allows you to do is to handle those three states of your promise. So while the promise is pending, when it's loading, you can say, hey, show me a loading bar. When the value is fulfilled, when the promise is resolved, you can show the data that you want to show, or you can handle errors as well by saying, oh, something went wrong. So we will show that in a second. We're going to skip snippets because we need a little bit of time to do the to-do app. And we're going to go back to runes. So we talked about runes for state, but there's also other runes. The runes that we're going to cover today are effect and props. So we've covered expressions, we've covered the blocks, and now we want to go and talk about writing CSS in Svelte. So let's do style here. And then we'll say on these list items, these elements, we'll say we're just gonna add a border for each one of them. This looks terrible. What I want to point out here is that Svelte has added a class, and it added a class, and it has this like ID here, this like hash, and what that's doing is it allows for our components to have their styles scoped to the individual components. So in Svelte, by default, when you write your style sheets in a component, no matter what it is, it only is scoped to that component. You won't affect the other components that are in the hierarchy. Inside, those are considered child elements, or the elements that are that wrap your component or considered parents or grandparents. You only affect the the component CSS that you write in this file. So that might seem annoying, but it's actually really cool. A lot of projects, when you're working with teams of developers, and some of them might not write the best CSS, so now you have to undo or refactor what they did, or write CSS on top of that to override it. And then that's never fun, a problem. CSS is pretty simple until it's not. So this keeps things simple. Now, there are situations where you want to share style sheets, right? So you can still import your style sheets and render them for each component by just importing that. Or you can use the global modifier. So global here, I could say I want all of my list items. Oops. I want all of my list items to have this border. So this is if you want global. Now, I haven't used this very much, but I think I've used it once. And then let's say you don't only want to declare styles globally for one element. You could just go in here, remove the curly braces, or I mean the parentheses, and make this a code block. And then you can pass in all of the styles. So if you wanted to say, I want to also style a H2 and give that a border, something, some styles here. That's how you do that. So what we've covered so far is that Svelte is reactive by nature. You can use the state rune to declare reactivity. We covered some basic markup. The each block allows you to render lists, iterate over each component and render those out. You have the if block, which allows you to conditionally display logic, and await allows you to handle asynchronous processes really smoothly. So now we covered a little bit of Svelte. Let's actually build something. So we're going to build a to-do app. So I'm going to delete all of this. And before I get started, I always like to think about what I'm going to do. So I need to render each. So I need a form for creating to-dos, I need to delete to-dos. Oh, that's going to bother me. I need to render each to-do in the to-do list. And what else do we need to do? We create the to-do, we delete the to-do, and then we show each to-do, and then maybe we'll be able to filter them. And oh, we also animations. Can't forget animation. So let's get started here. So we're going to do script, and I'm doing TypeScript. So I got to declare that there. It's TS, and then I'm going to make a to-do, and I need a form. So let's do this. Let's go into the to-do app. Let's go into source. That's where your source code is. Let's go into lib. This is a Svelte kit thing. I'm going to make a directory called, oh no. Make a directory called components, go into components, and then I'm going to create my first file, which is going to be called to-do form.svelte. And then I also want to do touch to-do Svelte, and then I might do touch. I don't know how many of those I'm going to need, but I just created those components. So I'll be able to import to-do form. And you see this $lib. This is just a fancy feature. It uses Vite under the hood. It's called an alias. So instead of having to go // // to find the components, you can, all the components that you have in the lib folder, you can just say lib. So now I'm gonna render my first component. Remember, it's gonna be uppercase. So I got to-do, to-do form. All right, and now I'm gonna go into this form. Again, we start with the script tag. And then we are gonna have a form here. And I'm going to, this is a PC keyboard, and I have a MacBook, so it's like the binding is a little weird. And we're gonna have an input in here. Input, they allow me to do an input. It's going to be text, and then I'm going to have some state here, equals $, state. It's going to start off as empty string, and then we're going to bind value with to do. So now, sorry, I should have had this pulled up this whole time. So got to do here, got an input here, and then this bind. What's the explanation for bind? So you usually pass data down. And the relationship is you have a child component and the parent component, and all of the data inside the child component is rendered from the parent. When the parent changes the data, the value is re-rendered, not the entire component. But with bind, you're able to have bi-directional, where the component can change the value and the parent component can change the value, and they both react to each other. All right, so got that. And now we need a button. And second here. I don't see any questions. All right, get a button. Oops, let's call it save. All right, and now in our save button, and now we want to import to-dos. So first we're going to say to-do list equals an empty array, and then we'll gonna have one to-do start off with, and then we want to import our to-do. So to-do here, it's too many. Oh, it's cool. We got our to-do, and now we need to add some styles there. So we'll say script ts, and then we will make this a list item, or actually we'll make it a div, and we'll say so we need to do another rune. I skipped over this. So we have data, and then we have these separated components, and we need to be able to pass data around to these components. So we're going to talk about another rune here that we mentioned earlier, props. So a lot of times you have isolated components and they share data, or you need to pass data into them. This is called props, short for properties. And this is what it looks like. So import a component, you can pass the component props just like you do with regular attributes of an element. And it could be a JavaScript expression, a function, and you pass it in, and then you are able to access that inside of the component using the props rune. So inside of to-do, we need the to-do. So we're going to say props equals props. And this returns the props. So now we need to pass in, let's say here, let's show all of the props. Then let's go into the page, and then in the to-do, let's say to-do equals to-do list 0. To-do list, and then something, this is to-do, and then we have to-do. And I think it's not working because we're not specifying a to-do, passing the to-do, then we do props dot to-do. Save. Go back. Oh, there it is. Some reason it didn't re-render. Is the server up? Yep, we're good. Cool. So you got props, returns a prod object, and then we got props dot to do. And this should be saving automatically. All right, cool. All right, so we got hot module reload back. All right. So we got our to do, and we're rendering out our to dos, but we have multiple to dos. How do we iterate over each to do in this list? Does anyone have an idea what feature we would use with Svelte? Because we want to show this to do for each. And don't see any answers. So that's going to be the each block. So we do each. We're going to say to-do list as to-do. And then we'll pass in the to-do. And now this should render out each one. There you go. And now this isn't very semantic, so we're going to make this in going to say unordered list here, and then want to make these each a list item, and then we're going to format that. There we go. All right. So as we add to the list, it just reacts, re-renders each one of those without us having to add any other code. So now we actually want to create a to-do. So how do we do that? So we have we got our button, got a to-do here, and then we have our form, and then we need on click, and then we're going to pass in a function here. So we can write it directly in to the component inline, the markup, but we are actually going to create a function. Create a function here. And then we can remove all this, keep it cleaner, just a little bit cleaner. We'll say create to do. And then, so that should work there. Cool. So that's working. Now we need our state. So we're going to put that. I'm going to put the state here. So we have the to-do state that's bound. When we create it, we have the state here. So we're going to say, maybe it would be better just to keep this simple. I'm going to move this so we don't need to shuffle around this data, and we're kind of tight on time. All right, so I'll put this in the wrong spot. Let's do that. There we go. So now we don't have to shuffle around that state. I think that would be confusing. All right, so we got that. Now we need to create our to-do. So now we have let to-dos equals state. This is going to be an array. And now what we'll need to do is pass in the to-do. And then we'll say to-dos dot push to-do. Oops. To-do, and this TypeScript is yelling at us. It's going to be a string. Now, and actually, think about it. Don't even need to do that. I could just say push the to-do and to-do type string to-do find to-do type never. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, I'll pass it in. As any type. What is going on here? To do. To do's dot. So we have the to do state. What's going on here? Open up the console here. So it is a string. That's what I expect it to be. And then to-dos is an array. Let me look at my notes. You know what? Make it an object. Then not assignable to type never. To-dos dot push. Type never. Why is it never? It's bound. Input. So logs the to-do. Accepts any item. Oh. It's one thing wrong. Then on click, pass in a callback function, create to do, and passing in an object. The object is of key to do with the state of to do. And this should be, you know what? This whole time, so get rid of this to-do list. It's to-dos. It's been working. Each to-dos. All right. So that's working. And then here I need pass in to do and then into the do, props to do. We're going to destructure this. And the reason we're going to destructure it is because then we're allowed to type this. We are able to provide defaults. So pretty much rule of thumb, always destructure your props. So now we got to do dot, and then we're going to clean this up a bit. To do name. Cool, then that should work. To do, refresh the page, object. That should be object. To do name equals. I'm still, get rid of this. Wait a minute. State, pass in the to do. It's a string. Input, pass in the string. Then here, pass in the to do. And that is that. What am I doing here? I'm sorry, guys. So we're passing an object to do. So we access the to do. And we'll just pass in the to do. So that wouldn't work. Pass in the to do. Name. Create to do, pass in to do. Push object name which is to do, which is a string. Do is bound to this. Every time this changes, should pass in an object. And then what I'm pushing is object with the name. So I should have to do dot name because I'm passing push name to do should be to do dot name, but it's not to do dot name. What am I doing wrong here? Passing in to do, right? Passing in to do here. Each to do is to, I think, yeah, wow, it's so I have to do here and I'm renaming it. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to call this action because I'm not great at naming things. And then this accepts action. Then push the to do. Fuck.
Charles has commented. I'm not sure if it will help.
Do you need an A?
No, do you need a semicolon after let to do's equal $state array?
I don't believe so, but good eye. Good attention to detail. I am, what's going on here?
This is new to me, so I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I was noticing that they were different. The two lets were different.
No, that makes sense. So we have a state of to do. That's a string. We have a list of to do, which would be a list of strings. We have a function called create to do, which accepts an object, and we are passing in an object. And we're console logging that, and that's working. And then we push. Yeah, what do we? So this, there we go. So I think, because we're passing in the object here, it's a to do. No, it accepts an object, passing an object, then call this passing in this. We're pushing this. So it's name, and that's to do. And then here, we have a prop. We're going to call it to do. And it's going to be action, and then this accepts to do. And now, object is to do, accepts it to do. And here we go. Let's change this to current because we have a name conflict. So current to do, and then we want that to be bound here. And then name, pass in current to do. And everything should be good. I had a naming conflict. There we go. Wow, that took a long time. It's kind of embarrassing. It happens. All right, so now, all right, we got a lot of time to make up. 3 minutes. Not going to be able to delete to-dos, but we can cover animation. So sorry about that, guys. Another thing really cool about Svelte is that it has built-in animation. So with tools like React, Vue.js, you have to either import a third-party dependency for animations or write your own. With Svelte, for a lot of use cases that you'll come across, Svelte has it out of the box. Since it's such a lightweight project, they were able to jam in transitions into their project. So let's start here. So at the beginning, I talked about the keyed block. Said we come back to that when we talk about animation. So we're gonna also mention the key block here. So what we want is for each of these to-dos, when we add them, we want them to animate. We want them to fade in, and once they're deleted, which we're not gonna be able to do, we want them to fade out. So what we need to do is import fade from Svelte transition. And then what that does, it accepts a configuration where I can pass in the delay in the duration. So now on each list item here, I can say, hey, transition, fade, and just like that, we should have some animation, and we need some styles here because this is not looking great. So we're gonna say for our, what else we're gonna say display flex, and then we're not, and also have to do lie. I want to say font size 2 rem. That's going to be pretty big, I think. And then yeah, so that helps. So we can see that as we display flex, I think it'll just be fine without the display. It's already flowing that way. So there we go. So we have animations, and every time a component is rendered for the first time, these transitions will run. So you don't only have fade. There's a bunch of other transitions out there. And then you also have animate. Animate is really cool. I don't think I'm going to be able to do these justice. So I'm actually going to just look up Svelte animations REPL. Visualizer, here it is. This is what I'm looking for. So we should be able to see all of these and cover them. And we're 1 minute over. So if we can do this in a few seconds, I think that'll be great. Oh no. Okay, perfect. All right, and then let's see, is this using, oh, it's using old Svelte syntax, which is okay. So now let's do fly. I like fly. So now we can get that to fly out. And again, the code for this is here. You just fly, and then you pass in your config that we talked about just a second ago, but you don't actually have to pass in configuration options, but you would want to. And you get these cool animations out of the box. Slide, it's pretty cool. Just slide out, slide in and out. And you can configure this for when the component enters and when the component leaves. So I think I have an example, Sonny Fishback. It's a pretty simple one. Thing fades in. Yeah, so with that, I'll open up the floor to any questions. Does anyone have any questions?
Sunny, do you want to talk a little bit about what you're going to present in a few weeks?
Yeah, so this was just syntax pretty much to get everyone familiar with Svelte. And then I'm going to cover Svelte Kit. So this will actually allow us to build a full stack application. So again, this was just for understanding the syntax, getting familiar with Svelte. And with Svelte Kit, we'll handle things like routing, loading data on the server side, and building a full stack application. So we'll be able to use the info that we learned today and apply that to building a full stack app. So yeah, I have an example. Ashley Furniture is actually built using SvelteKit. Watch, I'll find a bug while I'm presenting. Guarantee you there's going to be a bug here. But so if you go look at our page, look at our markup here, you can see that you can see Svelte all over the place. And we're going to cover how to load data, how to submit data to the server side, stuff like that. And yeah, didn't find any bugs. Actually, there is one, I think, if we do this. Yeah, the account page. Yeah, it's getting hidden, but I'm fixing that. I actually fixed it already. Just got to get it released. So yeah, that's what I'll be covering. SvelteKit, how to submit data to the server, how to load data from the server, and how to use what we learned today to actually build an app. So yeah, I see we didn't cover a lot. So if we go back to Svelte, what we didn't cover, we didn't cover the special elements. We didn't cover snippets in render. So if you're interested in more advanced concepts with Svelte, definitely take those. Take a look at those. And then we also skipped over a few of these runes. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's all I have for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sonny. And thanks, everybody. We, again, are going to have Sonny back with us here in a few weeks. So just keep an eye on Slack and we will share.